She Children's Classics, a classic children's story, specially selected by the editors of She magazine.
The Secret Garden by Frances Hodgson Burnett. When Mary Lennox was sent to Misselthwaite Manor to live with her uncle, everybody said she was the most disagreeable-looking child ever seen. It was true, too. She had a thin face and a little thin body, and her face was yellow because she'd been born in India and had always been ill, one way or another. Her father had held a position under the English government and had always been busy, and her mother had been a great beauty who cared only to go to parties and amuse herself. She had not wanted a little girl at all, and when Mary was born, she handed her over to the care of an ayah, who was made to understand that if she wished to please the Mem Sahib, she must keep the child out of sight as much as possible. And because the Mem Sahib would be angry if she was disturbed by crying, the servants always obeyed Mary and gave her her own way in everything. The young English governess, who came to teach her to read and write, disliked her so much that she gave up her place in 3 months. So, by the time she was 6 years old, she was as tyrannical and selfish a little pig as ever lived. One frightfully hot morning, when she was about 9 years old, she was awakened feeling very cross. There was something mysterious in the air that morning. Nothing was done in its regular order, and several of the native servants seemed missing, while those whom Mary saw slunk or hurried about with ashy and scared faces. But no one would tell her anything, and her ayah did not come. She was left alone, and at last wandered into the garden and began to play by herself under a tree near the veranda. At last, the mysteriousness of the morning was explained to Mary. The cholera had broken out in its most fateful form, and people were dying like flies. The ayah had been taken ill in the night, and it was because she had just died that the servants were wailing in their huts. Before the next day, 3 other servants were dead, and others had run away in terror. During the confusion and bewilderment of the second day, Mary hid herself in the nursery and was forgotten by everyone. Nobody thought of her, nobody wanted her. She lay down on her bed and fell soundly asleep. It was some time later when she heard footsteps and the door of her nursery opened.
Barney, there's a child here. A child alone in a place like this. Mercy on us, who is she?
I am Mary Lennox. I fell asleep when everyone had the cholera, and I've only just wakened up. Why does nobody come?
Is it the child no one ever saw? She's actually been forgotten.
Why was I forgotten? Why does nobody come?
Poor little kid. There's nobody left to come.
It was in that strange and sudden way that Mary found out that she had neither father nor mother left, that they had died and been carried away in the night, and that the few native servants who had not died had also left the house as quickly as they could get out of it, none of them remembering that there was a Missy Sahib. That was why the place was so quiet. If she'd been older, she would no doubt have been anxious at being left alone in the world. But she was young, and as she had always been taken care of, she supposed she always would be. Mary made the long voyage to England under the care of an officer's wife, who was taking her children to leave them in boarding school. She was rather glad to hand her over to the woman whom her uncle, Mr. Craven, had sent to meet her in London. The woman was his housekeeper at Misselthwaite Manor, and her name was Mrs. Medlock. She wore a very purple dress and a black bonnet with purple velvet flowers, which stuck up and trembled when she moved her head. Mary did not like her at all. The next day, they set out on their journey by train to Yorkshire. Mary sat in a corner of the railway carriage and looked plain and fretful. Mrs. Medlock had never seen a child who sat so still without doing anything, and at last she got tired of watching her and began to talk in a brisk, hard voice.
I suppose I may as well tell you something about where you're going to. Do you know anything about your uncle?
No.
Never heard your father and mother talk about him?
No.
I suppose you might as well be told something to prepare you. You are going to a queer place. Not that it's a grand big place in a gloomy way, and Mr. Craven's proud of it in his way, and that's gloomy enough too. The house is 600 years old, and it's on the edge of the moor, and there's near 100 rooms in it, though most of them shut up and locked, and there's a big park around it. Well, what do you think of that?
Nothing. I know nothing of such places.
But you're like an old woman. Don't you care?
It doesn't matter whether I care or not.
Oh, you're right enough there, it doesn't. What you ought to be kept at Misselthwaite Manor for, I don't know, unless because it's the easiest way. He's not going to trouble himself about you, that's sure. He never troubles himself about no one. He's got a crooked back. That set him wrong. He was a sour young man and got no good of all his money and big place till he was married. Course, she was a sweet, pretty thing, and he'd have walked the world over to get her a blade of grass she wanted. Nobody thought she'd marry him, but she did. And people said she married him for his money, but she didn't. She didn't. When she died...
Oh, did she die?
Yes, she died. And it made him queerer than ever. He cares about nobody. He won't see people. Most of the time he goes away, and when he's at Misselthwaite he shuts himself up in the west wing and won't let anyone but Pictures see him. Picture's an old fella, but he took care of him when he was a child and knows his ways.
Is it much further?
Oh, it's a right long way yet. And when we get there you needn't expect to see your uncle, because 10 to 1 you won't. You'll have to play about and look after yourself. You'll be told what rooms you can go into and what rooms you're to keep out of. There's gardens enough. But when you're in the house, don't go poking about. Mr. Craven won't have it.
I shall not want to go poking about, thank you.
She turned her face towards the streaming panes of the window of the railway carriage and gazed out at the grey rainstorm, which looked as if it would go on for ever and ever. She watched it so long that the greyness grew heavier and heavier before her eyes, and she fell asleep. It was quite dark when she awakened again. The train had stopped at a station, and Mrs. Medlock was shaking her. Mary stood up and tried to keep her eyes open while Mrs. Medlock collected her parcels. The little girl did not offer to help her, because in India native servants always picked up or carried things, and it seemed quite proper that other people should wait on her. A carriage stood on the road outside the station, and a smart footman helped her in. His long waterproof coat and the waterproof covering of his hat was shining and dripping with rain, as everything was. He shut the door, mounted the box with the coachman, and they drove off. The carriage lamps shed a yellow light on the rough-looking road which seemed to cut through bushes and low-growing things. On and on they drove, through the darkness, and though the rain stopped, the wind rushed by and whistled and made strange sounds.
Sounds like the sea.
That's the wind blowing through the bushes. It's a wild, dreary enough place to my mind, though there's plenty that likes the moors, particularly when the heather's in bloom.
I don't like it.
We're nearly there now, anyway. You see that bit of light twinkling? It's the light in the lodge window. We'll be there after a bit. Here we are, Misselthwaite Manor.
It looks awfully dark.
It is. This way.
Good evening, Mrs. Medlock.
Good evening, Mr. Pitcher. This is Mr. Craven's niece.
You're to take her to her room. He doesn't want to see her. He's going to London tomorrow.
Very well, Mr. Pitcher. So long as I know what's expected of me, I can manage.
What's expected of you, Mrs. Medlock, is that you make sure that he's not disturbed and that he doesn't see what he doesn't want to see.
Very well. This way, Mary, up the stairs. I'll show you your rooms. Ah, now they're just along here. Come along now. What are you looking at?
All these suits of armour. Whose are they?
Mr. Craven's. Now come along, please. Well, here we are. This room and the next are where you'll live, and you must keep to them. Don't you forget that. The manservant will bring your trunk up. Good night.
When she opened her eyes in the morning, it was because a young housemaid had come into her room to light a fire and was kneeling on the hearthrug, raking out the cinders noisily. Mary lay and watched her for a few moments, and then began to look about the room. She had never seen a room like it, and thought it curious and gloomy. The walls were covered with tapestry, with a forest scene embroidered on it. There were hunters and horses, dogs and ladies. Mary felt as if she were in the forest with them. Out of a deep window, she could see a great climbing stretch of land which seemed to have no trees on it, which looked rather like an endless, dull, purplish sea.
What is that?
That there?
Yes.
That's the moor. Does thou like it?
No, I hate it.
That's because thou'rt not used to it. Thou think it's too big and bare now, but thou will like it.
Do you?
Aye, that I do. I just love it. It's none bare. It's covered with growing things that smell sweet. It's fair lovely in spring and summer, when gorse and broom and heather's in flower. It smells of honey, and there's such a lot of fresh air, and sky looks so high, and bees and skylarks make such a nice noise humming and singing. I wouldn't live away from moor for anything.
You are a strange servant. You talk to me as if you were my equal. When I was in India, servants would never have dared to talk to me as you have just done.
I know that. If there was a grand missus at Misselthwaite, I should never have been even one of under housemaids. I might have been let to be scullery maid, but I'd never have been let upstairs. I'm too common, and I talk too much Yorkshire. But this is a funny house, for all it's so grand. Seems like there's neither master nor mistress, except Mr. Pitcher and Mrs. Medlock. Mr. Craven, he won't be troubled about anything when he's here, and he's nearly always away. Mrs. Medlock gave me place out of kindness. She told me she could never have done it if Misselthwaite had been like other big houses.
Are you going to be my servant?
I'm Mrs. Medlock's servant, and she's Mr. Craven's. My name's Martha, by the way. I'm to do the housemaid's work up here and wait on you a bit, but you don't need much waiting on.
Who is going to dress me?
Dress you? Can I dress the sen?
What do you mean? I don't understand your language.
I forgot. Mrs. Medlock told me I'd have to be careful or you wouldn't know what I was saying. I mean, can't you put on your own clothes?
No, I never did in my life. My ayah dressed me, of course.
Well, it's time thou should learn. Thou cannot begin younger. It'll do thee good to wait on thysen a bit. My mother always said she couldn't see why grandpeople's children didn't turn out fair fools, what with nurses and being washed and dressed and took out to walk as if they was puppies.
It is different in India.
Hey, I can see it's different. Anyway, it's time for thee to get up now. Mrs. Medlock said I was to carry the breakfast into the room next to this. It's been made into a nursery for thee. I'll help thee on with thy clothes if they'll get out of bed. If buttons are at the back, thou cannot button them up thyself. But best hurry up, or thy porridge will get cold.
Porridge? I don't want porridge.
Thou doesn't want the porridge?
I do not.
Thou doesn't know how good it is. Put a bit of treacle on it or a bit of sugar.
I don't want it.
Hey, I can't abide to see good victuals go to waste. If our children were at the table, they'd clean it bare in 5 minutes.
Why?
Why? Because they scarce ever had their stomachs full in their lives. They're as hungry as young hawks and foxes.
I don't know what it is to be hungry.
Well, it would do thee good to try it. I can see that plain enough. I've no patience with folks as sits and just stares at good bread and meat. My word, I wish Dickon and Phil and Jane and the rest of them had what's here.
Why don't you take it to them?
It's not mine, and this isn't my day out. I get my day out once a month, same as the rest. Then I go home and clean up for Mother and give her a day's rest.
Perhaps I'll have some toast and tea.
Better than nought. Then after breakfast you can wrap up warm and run out and play.
Out? Why should I go out on a day like this?
Well, if thou doesn't go out, thou'lt have to stay in. And what has thou got to do?
But who will go with me?
You'll go by yourself. You'll have to learn to play like other children does when they haven't got sisters and brothers. Our Dickon goes off on moor by himself and plays for hours. That's how he made friends with Pony. He's got sheep on moor that knows him, and birds as comes and eats out of his hand. However little there is to eat, he always saves a bit of his bread to coax his pets.
Well, perhaps it might amuse me to look at some of the birds. They could be different from those in India.
That they will. You have a nice walk round the gardens. Do thee good. There's lots of flowers in the summer-time, but there's nothing blooming now. Still, there's plenty to see. One of gardens is locked up, mind. No one has been in it for 10 years.
Why?
Mr. Craven had it shut up when his wife died so sudden. He won't let no one go inside. It was her garden. He locked the door and buried key. Oh, there's Mrs. Medlock's bell ringing. I must run.
After she was dressed, Mary did as Martha had suggested and went outside. She passed through the shrubbery gate and found herself in great gardens with wide lawns and flower beds and evergreens clipped into strange shapes, and a large pool with an old grey fountain in its midst. But the flower beds were bare, and the fountain was not playing. This was not the garden that was shut up. How could a garden be shut up? You could always walk into a garden. She was just thinking this when she saw that at the end of the path she was following there seemed to be a long wall with ivy growing over it, and in the wall was a door that stood open. She went through it and found it was a garden with walls all around it, and it was only one of several walled gardens which seemed to open one into another. The place was bare and ugly, Mary thought, as she stared about her. It might be nice in summer when things were green, but there was nothing pretty about it now. And as she stared, an old man with a spade over his shoulder walked through the door leading from the second garden. He looked startled when he saw Mary, and then touched his cap.
What is this place?
One of the kitchen gardens.
And what's through that door?
Another of them. There's another on t'other side of the wall, and there's an orchard t'other side of that.
Can I go in them?
If thou likes. But there's nowt to see.
I'll be the judge of that.
Please thyself. I've got work to be getting on with. She went through the door into another walled kitchen garden, where there were winter vegetables and glass frames. But in the far wall there was another door, and it was not open. Perhaps it led to the garden which no one had seen for 10 years. As she was not a timid child and always did what she wanted to do, Mary went to the green door and turned the handle. She hoped the door would not open because she wanted to be sure she had found the mysterious garden, but it did open easily, and she walked through it and found herself in an orchard. There were walls all around it, and trees trained against them, but no other door. Yet when she had entered the upper end of the garden, she had noticed that the wall did not seem to end with the orchard where she was, but to extend beyond, as if it enclosed a place at the other side.
It went further than this, I'm sure. I wonder what's on the other side of that wall. I can see the tops of some trees. Oh, what's that bird up there? He's got a bright red breast. I've never seen one like that before. Hello, little bird. You sing quite sweetly, don't you? I wonder what you were saying. Are you trying to tell me something? Oh, don't fly away. Silly bird. I've been to the other gardens.
Have you now? Oh, there's nothing to prevent thee.
I went into the orchard.
There was no dog at the door to bite thee.
There was no door into the other garden either.
What garden?
The one on the other side of the wall. There were trees there. I saw the tops of them. A bird with a red breast was sitting on one of them, and he sang.
Did he now? Ah, here he is.
Oh, that's the bird.
Where's thou been, that cheeky little beggar? I've not seen thee today. Hast thou begun thy courting this early in the season?
Will he always come when you call him?
Aye, that he will. I've knowed him ever since he was a fledgling. He came out nest into the garden, and when he first flew over the wall, he was too weak to fly back for a few days, and we got friendly. When he went over wall again, the rest of the brood was gone, and he was lonely, and he came back to me.
What kind of bird is he?
Don't I know? He's Robin Redbreast, and they're the friendliest birds alive. They're almost as friendly as dogs. Watch him pecking about there and looking round at us now and again. He knows we're talking about him.
Where did the rest of the brood fly to?
Oh, there's no knowing. The old ones turn 'em out of the nest and make 'em fly. He knows what it is to be lonely.
I'm lonely.
Art thou the little wench from India? Oh, then no wonder thou art lonely.
What is your name?
Ben Weatherstaff. I'm lonely myself, except when he's with me. He's the only friend I've got.
I have no friends at all. I never had. My ayah didn't like me, and I never played with anyone.
Oh, thou and me are a good bit alike. We was wove out the same cloth. We're neither of us good-looking, and we're both as sour as we look. We've got the same nasty tempers, both of us, I'll warrant.
Why is he suddenly doing that?
Oh, he's made up his mind to make friends with thee.
With me? Would you like to make friends with me, little Robin? Would you?
Ah, thou said that as nice and human as if thou was a real child instead of a sharp old woman. Thou said it almost like Dickon talks to his wild things on moor.
Do you know Dickon?
Oh, everybody knows him. I warrant the foxes even show him where their cubs lie, and the skylarks don't hide their nest from him.
Oh, the robin's flown over the wall. He's flown into the garden where there is no door.
He lives there. More than like he's caught in making up to some young madam of a robin that lives among rose trees there.
Rose trees? Are there rose trees?
Oh, there was, 10 years ago.
I should like to see them. Where is the door? There must be a door somewhere.
Oh, it was 10 years ago, but there isn't now.
No door. There must be.
Well, none as anyone can find, and none as is anyone's business. Don't be a meddlesome wench and poke your nose where it'll no cause to go. Here, now, I must get on with my work. Get you gone. I've no more time. At first, each day which passed by for Mary Lennox was exactly like the others. Every morning she awoke in her tapestried room and found Martha kneeling upon the hearth building her fire. Every morning she ate her breakfast and then gazed out of the window across the huge moor. And after she had stared for a while, she realized that if she did not go out, she would have to stay in and do nothing. And so she went out. She did not know that this was the best thing she could have done. One place she went to more often than to any other. It was the long walk outside the gardens with the walls around them. There was one part of the wall where the creeping dark green leaves were more bushy than elsewhere. It seemed as if for a long time that part had been neglected. This gave her so much to think about that she began to be quite interested, and to feel that she was not sorry she'd come to Misselthwaite Manor. The fact was that the fresh wind from the moor had begun to blow the cobwebs out of her young brain, and to waken her up a little. She began to stay out of doors nearly all day, and when she sat down to her supper at night, she felt hungry and comfortable. She did not feel cross when Martha chattered away. She felt as if she rather liked to hear her, and at last she thought she would ask her a question.
Why did Mr. Craven hate the garden, Martha?
Art thou thinking about that garden still? I knew thou would. That was just the way with me when I first heard about it.
Why did he hate it?
Listen to wind wuthering round the house. You could best stand up on more if you was out on it tonight.
Wuthering? What's wuthering?
It's that hollow, shuddering sort of roar as the wind rushes round the house.
I see. But why did he hate the garden so?
Mind, Mrs. Medlock said it's not to be talked about. There's lots of things in this place that's not to be talked over. That's Mr. Craven's orders. His troubles are none of the servants' business, he says. But for garden, he wouldn't be like he is.
Why?
It was Mrs. Craven's garden that she had made when first they were married, and she just loved it. None of the gardeners were ever let to go in. Him and her used to go in and shut the door and stay there hours and hours, reading and talking.
Go on.
Well, she was just a bit of a gal, and there was an old tree with a branch seat on it, and she made roses grow over it, and she used to sit there. But one day, when she was sitting there, branch broke, and she fell on ground and was hurt so bad that next day she died. Doctors thought he'd go out of his mind and die too. That's why he hates it. No one's gone in since, and he won't let anyone talk about it. Oh, fair wuthering tonight.
Yes. It sounds like someone's crying.
It's only wind. Sometimes it sounds as if someone was lost on moor and wailing. It's got all sorts of sounds.
But listen, it's in the house. It sounds like it's down one of those long corridors. There, I told you so. It is someone crying, and it isn't a grown-up person. It's stopped now.
Oh, it's the wind, I tell you. The wind playing tricks on your ears. And if it wasn't, it was little Betty Butterworth, scullery maid. She's had toothache all day.
The next day, The rain poured down in torrents again, and when Mary looked out of her window, the moor was almost hidden by grey mist and cloud. There could be no going out today. She stood at the window for about 10 minutes after Martha had swept up the hearth and gone downstairs. She was thinking about an idea which had come to her. Martha had told her that Misselthwaite Manor had 100 rooms with closed doors. She wondered if they were all really locked, and what she would find if she could get into any of them. Why shouldn't she go and see how many doors she could count? It would be something to do on this morning when she could not go out. She opened the door of the room and went into the corridor, and then she began her wanderings. She soon found herself in a long gallery whose walls were covered with portraits. It was not until she climbed to the second floor that she thought of going into one of the rooms. There was a massive door, and it opened into a big bedroom. There were embroidered hangings on the wall, and a broad window with leaded panes that looked out upon the moor. After that she opened more and more doors. She saw so many rooms she became quite tired. In one, which looked like a lady's sitting room, there was a cabinet with about 100 little elephants in it, made of ivory. By now she had wandered long enough and decided to turn back. 2 or 3 times she lost her way, but at last she reached her own floor again, although she was some distance from her room and did not know exactly where she was. She was standing at what seemed to be the end of a short passage, with tapestries on the wall.
Oh, which way now? It is all so confusing. Oh, there's a door behind this tapestry too. Where does that go, I wonder? There's that crying again. It's nearer than it was, and it is crying.
What are you doing here? What did I tell you?
Mrs. Medlock, I turned the wrong corner. I must have. I didn't know which way to go, and then I heard someone crying.
You didn't hear anything of the sort. You come back to your own nursery or I'll box your ears.
But I did hear someone crying.
Nonsense. Come along now, here's your room, just along here.
But...
No buts. Here we are. Now you stay where you're told to stay, or you'll find yourself locked up. The master had better get you a governess, same as he said he would. You're one that needs someone to look sharp after you. I've got enough to do.
There was someone crying. There was.
2 days after this, when Mary opened her eyes, she sat up in bed immediately and stared out of the window. The rainstorm had ended, and the clouds had been swept away in the night by the wind. The wind itself had ceased, and a brilliant, deep blue sky arched high over the moorland. Never, never had Mary dreamed of a sky so blue. It was Martha's day out, and she was going to walk the 5 miles across the moor to her mother's cottage, so Mary was left on her own. She went out into the garden as quickly as possible. The sunshine made the whole place look different. In the first kitchen garden, she found Ben Weatherstaff working there with 2 other gardeners. The change in the weather seemed to have done him some good. He spoke to her of his own accord. "Springtime's coming. Cannot thou smell it?"
I smell something nice and fresh and damp.
"Oh, that's the good rich earth. In the flower gardens out there, things will be stirring down below in dark. The sun's warming them. You'll see bits of green spikes sticking out of the black earth after a bit.
What will they be?
Crocuses, snowdrops, daffodillies. Hast thou never seen them?
No. Everything is hot and wet and green after the rains in India, and I think things grow up in the night.
Oh, these won't grow up in the night. They'll have to wait for 'em. You watch 'em.
Oh, it's that robin back again. Do you think he remembers me?
Remembers thee? He knows every cabbage stump in gardens, let alone people.
Are things stirring down below in the dark in that garden where he lives?
What garden?
The one where the old rose trees are. Are all the flowers dead, or do some of them come again in the summer? Are there ever any roses?
Well, ask him. He's the only one as knows. No one else has been inside it for 10 years. Now, if you'll excuse me.
What a grumpy old man he is. Oh, hello, Robin. Are you following me? You do remember me. You do. You're prettier than anything else in the world. Oh, this is lovely out here with you, Robin. I feel so very happy. Where are you going now? You want to go down there, do you? All right, I'll follow you instead, if that's what you want. Now, what have you found? Nice piece of newly dug earth, is that? What are you looking for? A juicy little worm, I expect. No worms there for you, then. You'd rather sit up there in that tree, would you? You're a funny little thing. What's that there, then? It looks like a ring. Is that what you were scratching for? Why, it's not a ring at all. It's a key. A key. Perhaps it's been buried here for 10 years. Has it, Robin? Is this the key to the garden? Is it? Well, you show me where the key is. You ought to show me the door, too. But I don't believe you know. Oh, you're asking me to follow you again, are you? There's nothing here. It's just thick ivy, like the rest of the walls covered in. That's all. Where? Where do you mean? Through here? A door! It's an old door! But will the key fit? It does! The secret garden.
It was the sweetest, most mysterious-looking place anyone could imagine. The high walls which shut it in were covered with the leafless stems of climbing roses. Mary did not know whether they were dead or alive. If she'd been Ben Weatherstaff, she could have told whether the wood was alive by looking at it. But she was inside the wonderful garden, and she could come through the door under the ivy any time. And she felt as if she had found a world all her own. There seemed to have been grass paths here and there, and in one or two corners there were alcoves of evergreen with stone seats, or all moss-covered flower urns in them. As she came near the second of these alcoves, she saw something sticking out of the black earth, some sharp little pale green points. She remembered what Ben Weatherstaff had said about crocuses and snowdrops and daffodils, and she knelt down to look at them. She did not know anything about gardening, but the grass seemed so thick in some places where the green points were pushing their way through that she thought they did not have enough room to grow. She searched about until she found a sharp piece of wood, and dug and weeded until she made nice little clear spaces around them. Mistress Mary worked in her garden until it was time for her to go in for her midday dinner. She could not believe she had been working 2 or 3 hours. She had been actually happy all the time, and she had such red cheeks and such bright eyes, and ate such a dinner, that Martha was delighted.
2 pieces of meat and 2 helps of rice pudding. The fresh air's given thee a good appetite.
I wish spring was here now, Martha. I want to see all the things that grow in England.
It'll come soon enough.
I wish I had a little spade, though.
A spade? Whatever does they want a spade for?
I thought perhaps I would dig like Ben Weatherstaff does. I might make a little garden if you would give me some seeds.
There now. If that wasn't one of the things Mother said. There's such a lot of room in that big place. Why don't they give her a bit for herself?
How much would a spade cost? A little one?
Well, at Thwaite Village, I saw little garden sets with a spade and a rake and a fork all tied together for 2 shillings.
I've got more than that in my purse.
Well then, you could get packets of flower seeds too. And our Dicken, he knows which is the prettiest ones and how to make them grow. We'll send him a note with money and ask him to buy 'em for you.
How shall I get the things when he buys them?
He'll bring 'em to you himself. He'll like to walk over this way.
Oh, then I shall see him. I never thought I should see Dickon.
Does they want to see him?
Yes, I do. I never saw a boy foxes and crows loved. I want to see him very much.
Then they shall, Mistress Mary. Then they shall.
The sun shone down for nearly a week on the secret garden. Mary was an odd, determined little person, and now she had something interesting to be determined about. She worked and dug and pulled up weeds steadily. During that week of sunshine, she also saw a lot of Ben Weatherstaff. She liked him and always tried to make him talk to her. This particular morning she stayed with him for 10 or 15 minutes, asking him questions about gardening, and then she went along the laurel-hedged walk which ended at a gate that opened into a wood in the park. When she reached the gate, she opened it and went through. A boy was sitting under a tree with his back against it, and on the trunk of the tree a brown squirrel was clinging, watching him, and quite near were 2 rabbits, sitting up and sniffing. When the boy saw Mary, he held up his hand. Mary remained motionless. He slowly came over to where she was standing.
I'm Dicken. I know that, Miss Mary.
Did you get Martha's letter?
That's why I come. I've got garden tools. Eh, they are good uns. And woman in shop threw in a packet of blue larkspur when I bought t'other seeds. Here. These are mignonette. Mignonette's sweetest smelling thing as grows. And it'll grow wherever you cast it, same as poppies will. Who's that robin as is calling us?
There, in that holly bush. Is he really calling us Dicken?
Aye, he's a friend of yours.
Do you think he is? Do you think he likes me?
He wouldn't come near thee if he didn't. Now, what about these seeds here? I'll plant them for thee myself, if you'll show me where the garden is.
Oh,
There's got a bit of garden, hasn't there?
well, I don't know anything about boys. Could you keep a secret if I told you one? It's a great secret. I don't know what I should do if anyone found out. I believe I should die.
I'm keeping secrets all the time. If I couldn't keep secrets from other lads, secrets about fox cubs, birds' nests and the like, there'd be naught safe on the moor. Aye, I can keep secrets.
I've stolen a garden. It isn't mine, it isn't anybody's. Nobody wants it. Nobody cares for it. Perhaps everything is dead in it already. I don't know.
Where is it?
Come with me and I'll show you.
Where is it then?
Here, behind this ivy.
Why, so it is. There's a door.
It's a secret garden, and I'm the only one who wants it to be alive.
Hey, it is a queer, pretty place. It's like as if a body was in a dream. I never thought I'd see this place.
Did you know about it?
Shh! We must talk low, or someone will hear us and wonder what's to do in here.
Oh, I forgot. Did you know about the garden?
Martha told me there was one, as no one ever went inside. I used to wonder what it was like.
Will there be roses? I thought perhaps they were all dead.
Hey? No, not them. Not all of them. Look here. There's lots of dead wood as ought to be cut out. But here's a new bit. See?
That one? Is it quite alive?
It's as wick as you or me.
Wick?
Why, wick, it means alive, lively.
I'm glad it's wick. I want them all to be wick.
Oh, there's a lot of work to do here.
Will you help me come and do it? I'm sure I can help too. I can dig and pull up weeds and do whatever you want me to. Oh, please say you will. Do come, Dickon.
I'll come every day if they wants me, rain or shine. It's best fun I ever had in my life. Shut in here and wakening up a garden. Mind you, I wouldn't want it all clipped and spick and span, would you? It's nicer with things running wild.
No, it wouldn't be like a secret garden if it was too tidy.
It's a secret garden, sure enough. But seems like someone besides Robin must have been in it since it was shut up 10 years ago.
But the door was locked and the key was buried.
That's true. It's a queer place. Mind, it seems to me as if there'd been a bit of pruning done here and there, later than 10 years ago.
And then the two of them began working in the garden. Mary was sorry when she heard the big clock in the courtyard strike the hour of her midday dinner. Dickon had brought food with him and told her he would get some more work done before he needed to start back home. Mary could scarcely bear to leave him. Suddenly it seemed as if he might be a sort of wood fairy who might be gone when she came into the garden again. He seemed too good to be true. Mary ran so fast back to the house that she was out of breath when she reached her room. Her hair was ruffled on her forehead, and her cheeks were bright red. Her dinner was waiting on the table, and Martha was waiting near it. She ate her dinner as quickly as she could, so she could get back to the garden. But when she rose from the table, Martha stopped her. Mr. Craven, she said, had come back that morning and wanted to see Mary. All the pink left Mary's cheeks. Her heart began to thump, and she felt herself changing into a stiff, plain, silent child again. Mrs. Medlock came to collect her, and she followed the housekeeper in silence. She was taken to a room in part of the house she had not been into before. A man was sitting in an armchair before the fire. She could see that he was not so much a hunchback as a man with high, crooked shoulders. He turned his head over them and spoke to her.
Come here. Are you well?
Yes.
Do they take good care of you?
Yes.
You're very thin.
I am getting fatter.
What do you want to do?
I want to play out of doors. I never liked it in India. It makes me hungry here, and I am getting fatter.
Where do you play?
Everywhere. I skip and run, and I look about to see if things are beginning to stick out of the earth. I don't do any harm.
Don't look so frightened. You could not do any harm, a child like you. You may do what you like.
May I?
Of course you may. I am your guardian, though I am a poor one for a child. I cannot give you time or attention. I'm too ill and wretched and distracted. But I wish you to be happy and comfortable. Is there anything you want? Toys? Books? Dolls?
Might I have a bit of earth?
Earth? Whatever do you mean?
To plant seeds in, to make things grow, to see them come alive.
Do you care about gardens so much?
I didn't know about them in India. I was always ill and tired, and it was too hot. But here it is different.
A bit of earth. You can have as much earth as you want. When you see a bit of earth you want, take it, child, and make it come alive.
May I take it from anywhere, if it's not wanted?
Anywhere. There. You must go now. I'm tired. Goodbye. I shall be away all summer.
Mary ran as quickly as she could to the garden. She had been away so much longer than she had thought she should. The gardening tools were laid together under a tree, but there was no Dickon to be seen. He had gone away, and the secret garden was empty, except for the robin, who had just flown across the wall and sat on a rosebush watching her. Something white fastened to the rosebush caught her eye. It was a piece of paper, and on it there were some roughly printed letters. "I will come back," they said. She hoped that Dickon would come back the very next day, and that night she fell asleep looking forward to the morning. But you never know what the weather will do in Yorkshire, particularly in springtime. She was awakened in the night by the sound of rain beating against her window. It was pouring down in torrents, and the wind was wuthering. She'd been lying awake, turning from side to side for about an hour, when suddenly something made her sit up in bed and turn her head towards the door, listening.
Isn't the wind now? That isn't the wind. It's that crying I heard before. I'm going to find out what it is. Everybody's in bed, and I don't care about Mrs. Medlock. I don't care. Now, where's it coming from? This way. Yes. It's coming from that door where Mrs. Medlock appeared. I know it is. Down here? No. It must be this way, then. Yes. There it is. It's coming from this door.
Who are you? Are you a ghost?
No, I'm not. Are you?
No, I'm Colin.
Who is Colin?
I am Colin Craven. Who are you?
I am Mary Lennox. Mr. Craven is my uncle.
He's my father.
Your father? No one told me he had a son. Why didn't they?
Come here. You are real, aren't you? I have such real dreams. I was afraid you might be one of them.
Did no one tell you I had come to live here?
No, they daren't, because I should have been afraid you would see me. I won't let people see me.
Why?
Because I am like this always, ill and having to lie down. If I live, I may be a hunchback, but I shan't live. My father hates to think I may be like him. He doesn't even want to see me.
Why?
My mother died when I was born, and it makes him wretched to look at me.
He hates the garden too because she died.
What garden?
Oh, just a garden she used to like. Have you been here always?
Nearly always. Sometimes I have been taken to places at the seaside, but I won't stay because people stare at me. I used to wear an iron thing to keep my back straight, but a grand doctor from London said it was stupid. He told me to take it off and keep me out in the fresh air. I hate fresh air, and I don't want to go out.
I didn't when I first came here either.
How old are you?
10, the same as you.
How do you know that I'm 10?
Because when you were born, the garden door was locked and the key was buried, and it has been locked for 10 years.
What garden door was locked? Tell me. I want to know.
It was the garden Mr. Craven hates.
What sort of garden is it?
No one has been allowed to go in it for 10 years.
Why not?
Nobody talks about it.
I could make them.
Could you?
Everyone is obliged to please me.
Do you really think you won't live?
I don't suppose I shall. Ever since I remember anything, I've heard people say I shan't. My doctor is my father's cousin. He is quite poor, and if I die, he will have all Misselthwaite when my father is dead. I should think he wouldn't want me to live.
Do you want to live?
No, but I don't want to die. When I feel ill, I lie here and think about it until I cry and cry. But let us talk about something else. Talk about that garden. Don't you want to see it?
Oh, well, yes.
I do.
What do you mean?
I don't think I ever wanted to see anything before, but I want to see that garden. I want the key dug up and the door unlocked. I could make them take me there in my chair. That would be getting fresh air. I'm going to make them open that door.
Oh, don't. Please don't do that.
Why? You said you wanted to see it.
I do. But if you make them open the door, it will never be a secret again.
A secret? What do you mean?
You see, if no one knows but us, if there was a door hidden somewhere under the ivy, if there was, and we could find it, we could slip through it, and no one would know we were inside. It would be a secret garden. We could dig and plant seeds and make it all come alive.
Why? Is it dead then?
It soon will be if no one cares for it. Oh, don't you see how much nicer it would be if it was a secret?
I never had a secret before.
If you won't make them take you to the garden, perhaps I could find out how to get in. And then, if the doctor wants you to go out in your chair, we might find a boy who would push you.
I should like that. I should not mind fresh air in a secret garden.
What would Mrs. Medlock do if she found out I had been here?
She would do as I told her to do. I should tell her that I wanted you to come here and talk to me every day. I'm glad you came.
So am I. I will come as often as I can, but I shall have to look every day for the garden door.
Yes, you must. I think you shall be a secret too. I will not tell them until they find out. I can always send the nurse from the room and say I want to be by myself. Do you know Martha?
Yes, she waits on me.
Martha shall tell you when to come here.
Martha knew about you all the time?
Yes, she often attends to me.
I've been here a long time. Shall I go away now? Your eyes look sleepy.
I wish I could go to sleep before you leave me.
Shut your eyes, and I will do what my ayah used to do in India. I will stroke your hand and sing something quite low. Ekdam bola chahai, ekdam bola chahai, ekdam bola chahai.
The moor was hidden in mist when the morning came, and the rain had not stopped pouring down. There could be no going out of doors. In the afternoon, Mary told Martha how she had found out what the crying was, and how she had stayed with Colin. Martha's face became red with fright. Very soon afterwards, a bell rang to summon Martha. She was out of the room about 10 minutes, and came back with a puzzled expression. She believed that Mary had bewitched him. Colin was up on his sofa with his picture books. He had told the nurse to stay away until 6 o'clock, and said he wanted Mary to go and talk to him. Mary was quite willing to go quickly. There was a bright fire when she entered the room. Colin himself was wrapped in a velvet dressing-gown and sat against a big brocaded cushion. Mary sat beside him and told him about India and Rajas and Dickon and the moor. Mary talked more than she had ever talked before, and they both began to laugh over nothing, as children do when they're happy together. They enjoyed themselves so much that they forgot about the time, and in the midst of the fun, the door opened, and in walked Dr. Craven and Mrs. Medlock.
Good Lord! Who is this girl? What does this mean?
This is Mary Lennox. She is my cousin. I asked her to come and talk to me. I like her. She must come and talk to me whenever I send for her.
What is this, Mrs. Medlock?
Oh, sir, I don't know how it happened. There's not a servant in the place that'd dare to talk. They all have their orders.
Nobody told her anything. She heard me crying and found me herself. Don't be silly, Medlock.
I'm afraid there's been too much excitement. Excitement is not good for you, my boy.
I should be excited if she kept away. I am better. She makes me better. The nurse must bring up her tea with mine. We will have tea together.
Well, he does look rather better, I must admit, but now I come to think of it, he looked better this morning in any case.
Mary came into my room last night. She stayed with me a long time.
Nevertheless, you must not forget you are ill. You must not talk too much. You must not forget you are easily tired.
I want to forget it. She makes me forget I am ill. That is why I want her, and I shall.
After another week of rain, blue sky appeared again, and the sun which poured down was quite hot. Though there had been no chance to see either the secret garden or Dicken, Mary enjoyed herself very much. She'd spent hours of every day with Colin in his room, talking about Rajahs, or gardens, or Dicken. They'd looked at splendid books and pictures, and sometimes Mary had read things to Colin. When he was amused and interested, he scarcely looked like an invalid at all. In her talks with Colin, Mary had tried to be very cautious about the secret garden. She wanted to find out if he could be trusted. If he really could, wouldn't it be possible to take him into the garden without having anyone find it out? The Grand Doctor had said he must have fresh air. Perhaps if he had a great deal of fresh air, and knew Dicken, and saw things growing, he might not think so much about dying. The sun was pouring in, slanting rays through the blinds, and there was something so joyous in the sight of it that Mary jumped out of bed and ran to the window. Mary put her hand out of the window and held it in the sun. She couldn't wait to see the garden. She had learnt to dress herself by this time, and she put on her clothes in 5 minutes and flew downstairs. But, early though it was, when she reached the secret garden, Dicken was already there.
Oh, Dicken, how could you get here so early? The sun has only just got up.
Hey, I was up long before him. How could I have stayed abed with garden lying here waiting? See here? See how these shoots is pushed up? And these? And these? They're crocuses, they are.
There's robin too.
Aye, it's Ben Weatherstaff's robin, all right. He's building his nest. Us mustn't seem as if us was watching him too close. He'd be out with us for good if he got notion us was interfering now.
But if we talk about him, I can't help looking at him. We must talk of something else. There is something I want to tell you.
What is it that's got to tell me?
Well, do you know about Colin?
Mr. Craven's boy?
Yes. I've seen him. I've been to talk to him every day this week. He says I'm making him forget about being ill and dying.
I'm glad of that. I'm right down glad.
How did you know about Colin?
Everybody as knowed about Mr. Craven knowed there was a lad as was like to be a cripple. Folks is sorry for Mr. Craven, because Mrs. Craven was such a pretty young lady, and they were so fond of each other. They say as Mr. Craven can't bear to see him, because his eyes is so like his mother's.
Do you think he wants him to die?
No, but he wishes he'd never been born. He's afraid one day he'll find he's growed hunchback.
Colin's so afraid of himself that he won't sit up. He says if he should feel a lump coming, he would scream himself to death.
If Colin was out here, he wouldn't be looking for lumps to grow on his back. He'd be watching for buds to break up rose bushes.
I've been wondering that myself. If he could keep a secret, I wonder if we could bring him here without anyone seeing. Perhaps you could push his carriage.
It'd be good for him, I warrant. I could push his carriage well enough.
Mary and Dicken found a great deal to do that morning. She was late in returning to the house, and was in such a hurry to get back to her work that she quite forgot Colin until the last moment. She asked Martha to tell Colin she was busy and couldn't get to see him yet. The afternoon was even lovelier and busier than the morning. Already nearly all the weeds were cleared out of the garden, and most of the roses and trees had been pruned or dug about. Dickon had brought a spade of his own, and he had taught Mary to use all her tools, so that by this time it was plain that though the lovely wild place was not likely to become a gardener's garden, it would be a wilderness of growing things before the springtime was over. The sun was beginning to set, and sending gold-coloured rays slanting under the trees when they parted. Mary ran back to the house as quickly as she could. She wanted to tell Colin all that she, Dickon, and the springtime had been doing, would like to hear. So it was not very pleasant to hear that Colin had been nearly having one of his tantrums. He was not on his sofa when she went into his room. He was lying flat on his back in bed, and he did not turn his head towards her as she came in. This was a bad beginning. Mary marched up to him with her stiff manner.
Why didn't you get up?
I did get up this morning when I thought you were coming. I made them put me back in bed this afternoon. My back ached and my head ached. Why didn't you come?
I was working in the garden with Dickon.
I won't let that boy come here if you go and stay with him instead of coming to talk to me.
If you send Dickon away, I'll never come again.
You'll have to if I want you to.
I won't.
I'll make you. They shall drag you in.
Shall they? They may drag me in, but they can't make me talk when they get me here.
You are a selfish thing.
What are you? Selfish people always say that. You're the most selfish boy I ever saw.
I'm not. I'm not as selfish as your Dickon is. He keeps playing in the dirt when he knows I'm all by myself. He's selfish, if you like.
He's nicer than any other boy that ever lived.
Why, he's just a common cottage boy off the moor.
He's better than you. He's 1,000 times better.
I'm not as selfish as you, anyway, because I'm always ill. And I'm sure there is a lump coming on my back. And I'm going to die besides.
You're not.
I'm not. I am. You know I am. Everybody says so.
I don't believe it. You just say that to make people sorry.
Get out of my room. Get out.
I'm going, and I won't come back. I was going to tell you all sorts of nice things. Now I won't tell you a single thing.
Mary had got up very early that morning and had worked hard in the garden, and she was tired and sleepy. So as soon as Martha had brought her supper and she had eaten it, she was glad to go to bed. She thought it was the middle of the night when she was awakened by such dreadful sounds that she jumped out of bed in an instant. What was it? The next minute she felt quite sure she knew. Doors were opened and shut, and there were hurrying feet in the corridor, and someone was crying and screaming at the same time, crying and screaming in a horrible way. She put her hands over her ears and felt sick and shivering. Just then she heard more feet running down the corridor, and her door opened and Martha came in.
He's working himself into hysterics, that he is. Do come. See if you can do out. He likes you, that he does.
Why should I? He turned me out of his room this morning.
You go scold him proper then. Give him something new to think on.
It's about time someone did. You stop! Stop, I say! I hate you! Everybody hates you! I wish everybody would run out of the house and let you scream yourself to death! If you scream another scream, I'll scream too, and I can scream louder than you can, and I'll frighten you.
I can't stop. I can't.
You can. Half that ails you is your temper and hysterics. Just hysterics!
I felt the lump. I felt it. I knew I should. I shall have a hunch on my back, and then I shall die.
You didn't feel a lump. If you did, it was only an hysterical lump. Hysterics makes lumps. There's nothing wrong with your horrid back. Turn over and let me look at it. Nurse, Mrs. Medlock, come here and show me his back this minute.
Well, perhaps he won't let me.
Show her. She'll see then.
There's not a single lump there, not a lump as big as a pin, except backbone lumps, and you can only feel them because you're so thin.
If you ever say there is again, I shall laugh.
I didn't know that he thought he had a lump on his spine. His back is weak because he won't try to sit up. I could have told him there was no lump there.
Could you?
Yes, sir.
There.
Do you think I could live to grow up?
You probably will if you do what you're told to do and not give way to your temper and stay out in the fresh air.
I'll go out with you, Mary. I shan't take fresh air if we find... I shall like to go out with you if Dickon will push my chair.
You must go back and get your sleep now, miss. He'll drop off after a while.
I'll stay with him until he does. You can all go if you like.
Well, if he doesn't go to sleep in half an hour, you must call me.
Very well.
I almost told, but stopped myself in time. I'll go to sleep now. Promise. But tell me, do you think you found out anything about the way into the secret garden?
Yes, I think I have.
Oh, Mary, shall I see it? Shall I live to get into it?
Of course you'll see it. Don't be silly. The truth is, I've seen it myself and I've been in. I found the key and got in weeks ago. But I daren't tell you. I daren't because I was so afraid I couldn't trust you for sure.
But you can now.
I can now. Now go to sleep, and very soon you will see the secret garden for yourself.
Of course, Dr. Craven had been sent for the next morning, after Colin had had his tantrum. He was always sent for when such a thing occurred, and he always found, when he arrived, a white, shaken boy lying on his bed, sulky and still so hysterical that he was ready to break into fresh sobbing at the least word. In fact, Dr. Craven dreaded and detested these visits. But this time, the scene which Dr. Craven beheld when he entered the patient's room was indeed astonishing. As Mrs. Medlock opened the door, he heard laughing and chattering. Colin was on his sofa in his dressing gown, and he was sitting up quite straight, looking at a picture in one of his books and talking to Mary.
I'm sorry to hear you were ill last night, my boy.
I'm better now, much better. I'm going out in my chair in a day or two, if it is fine. I want some fresh air.
It must be a very fine day, and you must be careful not to tire yourself.
Fresh air won't tire me. Besides, my cousin knows how to take care of me. She made me better last night, and a very strong boy I know will push my carriage.
He must be a strong boy and a steady boy. Who is he?
It's Dickon.
Oh, Dicken. Well, if it is Dicken, you will be safe enough. He's as strong as a moor pony, is Dicken.
Will that be all, sir?
Just arrange my cushions, will you? You have my permission to go now.
Which way, then?
You know the way. I don't. There are so many sounds of singing and humming. And what is this scent the puffs of wind bring?
It's ghosts on moor that's opening out. Hey, bees are at it wonderful today.
This is it. This is where I used to walk up and down and wonder.
Is it? But I can see nothing. There's no door.
That's what I thought. That is the garden where Ben Weatherstaff works.
Is it?
This is where the robin flew over the wall.
Oh, I wish he'd come again.
And that is where he perched on a little heap of earth and showed me the key.
Where? Where?
And this is where I went to talk to him when he chirped at me from the top of the wall. And this is the ivy the wind blew back.
Oh.
And here is the handle, and here is the door. Dickon, push him in quickly.
I shall get well. I shall get well. Mary, Dickon, I shall get well, and I shall live forever and ever and ever.
That afternoon, the whole world seemed to devote itself to being perfect and radiantly beautiful and kind to one boy. Perhaps out of pure heavenly goodness, the spring came and crowded everything it possibly could do into one place. Delight reigned. They drew the chair under the plum tree, which was snow white with blossom and musical with bees. There were flowering cherry trees near, and apple trees whose buds were pink and white. Between the blossoming branches of the canopy, bits of blue sky looked down like wonderful eyes. Mary and Dickon worked a little here and there, and Colin watched them. They brought him things to look at, buds which were opening, bits of twig whose leaves were just showing green, the empty shell of some bird early hatched. Dickon pushed the chair slowly round and round the garden, stopping every moment to look at wonders springing out of the earth or trailing down from trees. It was like being taken in state round the country of a magic king and queen, and shown all the mysterious riches it contained. The wheeled chair had been drawn back under the canopy, and Dickon had sat down on the grass when Colin saw something he had not had time to notice before.
That's a very old tree over there, isn't it?
Yes.
The branches are quite grey. There's not a single leaf anywhere. It's quite dead, isn't it?
Aye. But them roses as has climbed all over it will near hide every bit at dead wood when they're full of leaves and flowers. It won't look dead then. It'll be prettiest of all.
It looks as if a big branch had been broken off. I wonder how it was done.
Well, I don't rightly know. It's been done many a year, I dare say. Hey, look at that robin. He's been foraging for his mate.
He's taking her tea to her. I think I'd like some tea myself. Go and make one of the men servants bring some in a basket to the rhododendron walk, and then you and Mary can bring it here. I don't want this afternoon to go, but I shall come back tomorrow, and the day after, and the day after.
You'll get plenty of fresh air.
I'm going to get nothing else. I've seen the spring now, and I'm going to see the summer. I'm going to see everything grow here. I'm going to grow myself.
That they will. Us'll have thee walking about here and digging same as other folk before long.
Walk? Will I?
For sure they will. There's got legs of thine own, same as other folk.
But they're so thin and weak. I'm afraid to try to stand on them.
When thou stops being afraid, thou'lt stand on 'em.
I shall. Who is that man?
Man?
Look. Just look at the top of that wall.
I never thought much of thee. Always asking questions and poking their nose where it wasn't wanted. Hadn't been for the robin, drat him.
Ben Weatherstaff! Ben Weatherstaff! It was the robin who showed me the way.
The bad young un, laying that badness on a robin. However in the world did they get in that garden?
I told you it was the robin.
Wheel me over there, Dickon, and stop right in front of him. You up there! Do you know who I am?
Who thou art? Aye, that I do, with a mother's eyes staring at me. Lord knows how they'll come here. But thou art the poor cripple.
I'm not a cripple. I'm not.
He's not. He's not got a lump as big as a pin.
That hasn't got a crooked back.
No.
That hasn't got crooked legs.
How dare you? Dickon, come here. Help me off with these blankets. I'll show you.
He can do it. He can.
Crooked legs, have I? Look at me. Look at me.
He's as straight as I am. As straight as any lad in Yorkshire.
Hey, the lies folk tells. Thou'rt as thin as a lath, as white as a wraith, but there's not a knob on thee. I'll make a man yet. God bless thee.
I'm your master when my father is away, and you're to obey me. This is my garden. Don't dare to say a word about it. You get down from that ladder and meet Miss Mary in the long walk. She will bring you here, but be quick.
Oh, yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Go and meet him, Mary. I can stand.
That you can.
Is it magic?
Thou's doing magic thyself. It's same magic as made these here crocuses work out to earth.
I'm going to walk to that tree. Just watch me. Ah, I see you've come.
Aye, sir.
What's your name?
Ben Weatherstaff.
What work do you do in the gardens, Weatherstaff?
Anything I'm told to do. I'm kept on by favour because she liked me.
She?
That mother.
My mother? This was her garden, wasn't it?
Aye, it was that. She were main fond of it.
It's my garden now. I am fond of it. I shall come here every day, but it is to be a secret. My orders are that no one is to know that we come here. Dickon and my cousin have worked and made it alive. I shall send for you sometimes to help.
I've come here before when no one saw me.
What? When?
Last time I was here was about 2 years ago.
But no one has been in it for 10 years. There was no door.
I'm no one. And I didn't come through door, I came over the wall. The rheumatics held me back the last 2 years.
That come and did a bit of pruning.
She was fond of it, so she was. I'd like to plant a bit of something thyself. I can get thee a rose in a pot.
Yes! Go and get it, quick!
Ben Weatherstaff went his way, forgetting rheumatics. Dickon took his spade and began digging a hole. Then Colin went on turning the soft earth over and over. He looked up at the sky, flushed and glowing with the strangely new exercise. He wanted to plant the rose before the sun went down. Mary thought that perhaps the sun held back a few minutes just on purpose. Ben Weatherstaff brought the rose in its pot from the greenhouse. He hobbled over the grass as fast as he could. He had begun to be excited too. He knelt down and broke the pot from the mould and handed the plant to Colin. The thin white hands shook a little as Colin set the rose in the hole and held it, while old Ben made firm the earth. And the magic, or whatever it was, so gave him strength that when the sun did slip over the edge and end the strange, lovely afternoon for them, there Colin actually stood on his 2 feet, laughing. Dr. Craven had been waiting some time at the house when they returned to it. He had indeed begun to wonder if it might not be wise to send someone out to explore the garden paths. When Colin was brought back to his room, the poor man looked him over seriously.
You should not have stayed so long. You must not overexert yourself.
I am not tired at all. It has made me well. Tomorrow I am going out in the morning as well as the afternoon.
I'm not sure I could allow it. I'm afraid it would not be wise.
It would not be wise to try and stop me. I am going.
I must stress that, in my opinion... oh well, so be it. I will take my leave. Good day to you, Master Colin. Mistress Mary?
And why are you looking at me like that?
I'm thinking I'm rather sorry for Dr. Craven.
So am I. But not without an air of satisfaction. He won't get Misselthwaite at all now. I'm not going to die.
I'm sorry for him because of that, of course. But I was just thinking then that it must have been very horrid to have to be polite for 10 years to a boy who was always rude. I would never have done it.
Am I rude?
If you had been his own boy and he had been a slapping sort of man, he would have slapped you.
But he daren't.
No, he daren't. Nobody ever dared to do anything you didn't like, because you were going to die and things like that. You were such a poor thing.
But I'm not going to be a poor thing. I won't let people think I'm one. I stood on my feet this afternoon.
It's always having your own way that has made you like this.
Well, I shall stop being like it, and I shall get better still if I go every day to the garden. I know I will. There is magic in there, good magic. You know, Mary, I'm sure there is.
So am I.
They always called it magic, and indeed it seemed like it in the months that followed. The wonderful months, the amazing months. Oh, the things which happened in that garden. At first it seemed that green things would never cease pushing their way through the earth, in the grass, in the beds, even in the crevices in the wall. Then the green things began to show buds, and the buds began to unfurl and show colour. Every shade of blue, every shade of purple, every tint and hue of crimson. In its happy days, flowers had been tucked away into every inch and hole and corner. Ben Weatherstaff had seen it done, and had himself scraped out mortar from between the bricks of the wall, and made pockets of earth for lovely clinging things to grow on. The seeds Dickon and Mary had planted grew as if fairies had tended them, and the roses, rising out of the grass, tangled round the sundial, wreathing the tree trunks and hanging from their branches, long garlands falling in cascades. Colin saw it all, watching each change as it took place. And this was not the half of the magic. The fact that he had really once stood on his feet set Colin thinking tremendously. The next morning, when they went to the secret garden, he sent at once for Ben Weatherstaff.
Good morning, Ben Weatherstaff. I want you and Dickon and Miss Mary to stand in a row and listen to me, because I am going to tell you something very important.
Aye, aye, sir.
I'm going to try a scientific experiment. When Mary found this garden, it looked quite dead. Then something began pushing things out of the soil and making things come out of nothing. I don't know what it was, so I call it magic. Magic in this garden has made me stand up and know I'm going to live to be a man. I'm going to make the scientific experiment of trying to get some magic and put it in myself and make me strong. Every morning and evening I'm going to say, magic is in me, magic is making me well. I'm going to be as strong as Dickon, and you must all do it too. That is my experiment. Will you help, Ben Weatherstaff?
Aye. Aye, sir.
What will Dr. Craven say?
He won't say anything, because he won't be told. This is to be the biggest secret of all. No one is to know anything about it until I have grown so strong that I can walk and run like any other boy. I shall come here every day in my chair, and I shall be taken back in it. I won't have people whispering and asking questions, and I won't let my father hear about it until the experiment has quite succeeded. Then sometime when he comes back to Misselthwaite, I shall just walk into his study and say, "Here I am. I am like any other boy. I am quite well, and I shall live to be a man. It has been done by scientific experiment."
He will think he is in a dream. He won't believe his eyes.
While the secret garden was coming alive, and two children were coming alive with it, there was a man wandering about certain far-away, beautiful places in the Norwegian fjords and the valleys and mountains of Switzerland. And he was a man who for 10 years had kept his mind filled with dark and heartbroken thinking. When he travelled about, darkness so brooded over him that it was as if he poisoned the air about him with gloom. Most strangers thought he must be either half mad or a man with some hidden crime on his soul. He was a tall man with a drawn face and crooked shoulders, and the name he always entered on hotel registers was Archibald Craven, Misselthwaite Manor, Yorkshire, England. He had travelled far and wide since the day he saw Mistress Mary in his study and told her she might have her bit of earth. He had been in the most beautiful places in Europe, though he had remained nowhere more than a few days, and he always chose the quietest and remotest spots. This particular day he was in a wonderful valley in the Austrian Tyrol, and he had been walking along through such beauty as might have lifted any man's soul out of shadow. He had walked a long way but it had not lifted his. At last he felt tired and had thrown himself down to rest on a carpet of moss by a stream. As he sat, gazing into the clear running of the water, Archibald Craven gradually felt his mind and body both grow quiet. He wondered if he was going to sleep, but he was not. He sat and gazed at the sunlit water, and his eyes began to see things growing at its edge. There was one lovely mass of blue forget-me-nots, growing so close to the stream that its leaves were wet. The valley seemed to grow quieter and quieter as he sat and stared at the bright, delicate blueness. He did not know how long he sat there or what was happening to him, but at last he moved as if he were awakening, and he got up slowly, drawing a deep, soft breath.
Oh, what is it? I almost feel as if I were alive. Lilias, is that you? My own dear wife. Lilias, where are you? The garden. Your garden. But the door is locked and the key is buried deep.
Now he found himself thinking of his young son as he had never thought in all the 10 years past. Though he did not intend to think about him, for some reason memories of him constantly drifted into his mind. He remembered the black days when he had raved like a madman because the child was alive and the mother was dead. He had refused to see it, and when he had gone to look at last, it was such a weak, wretched thing that everyone had been sure it would die. He had not meant to be a bad father, but he had not felt like a father at all. He had supplied doctors and nurses and luxuries, but he had shrunk from the mere thought of the boy and had buried himself in his own misery. But now he began to think in a new way, and he thought long and steadily and deeply.
Perhaps I've been wrong for these 10 years. I will go back to Misselthwaite. That is what I must do. Yes, I'll go at once.
How he had driven away from Misselthwaite the last time, shuddering to think of its closed rooms and the boy living in the four-poster bed with the brocaded hangings. Was it possible that perhaps he might find him changed a little for the better, and that he might overcome his shrinking from him? How real that dream had been! How wonderful and clear the voice which had called to him!
I will try to find the key. I will try to open the door. I must. Though I don't know why. Mrs. Medlock! Medlock!
Oh, Mr. Craven, sir. I wasn't expecting you.
Well, that's as may be. I'm here now.
So you are, sir.
How is Master Colin, Medlock?
Master Colin, well, sir, he's different, in a manner of speaking.
Worse?
Well, you see, sir, neither Dr. Craven nor the nurse nor me can exactly make him out.
Well, why is that?
To tell the truth, sir, Master Colin might be better and he might be changing for the worse.
Has he become more peculiar?
That's just it, sir. He's growing very peculiar. Just without warning, not long after one of his tantrums, he suddenly insisted on being taken out every day by Miss Mary, and young Dickon that could push his chair. He took a fancy to both Miss Mary and Dickon. And if you'll credit it, sir, out of doors he will stay from morning to night.
How does he look?
If he took his food natural, sir, you'd think he was putting on flesh, but we're afraid it may be a sort of bloat. He laughs sometimes in a queer way when he's alone with Miss Mary. He never used to laugh at all, sir. Dr. Craven never was as puzzled in his life.
Where is Master Colin now?
Why, in the garden, sir. He's always in the garden, though not a human creature is allowed to go near for fear they'll look at him.
In the garden?
Yes, sir, in the garden.
Mr. Craven had to make an effort to bring himself back to the place he was standing in. And when he felt he was on earth again, he turned and went out of the room. He crossed the lawn and turned into the long walk by the ivied walls. He did not walk quickly. He felt he was being drawn back to the place he had so long forsaken, and he did not know why. As he drew near, his step became still more slow. He knew where the door was, even though the ivy hung over it, but he did not know exactly where he had buried the key. So he stopped and stood still, looking about him, and almost the moment after he had paused, he listened, asking himself if he were walking in a dream. The ivy hung thick over the door. The key was buried deep, yet inside the garden there were sounds. It seemed actually like laughter. What in heaven's name was he dreaming of? Was he losing his reason and thinking he heard things which were not for human ears? And then came a wild outbreak of laughing shouts, and the door in the wall was flung wide open, the sheet of ivy swinging back, and a boy burst through it at full speed, straight into him.
What?
Father!
Colin! Can you really be Colin?
You can't believe it, Father, can you? I scarcely can myself. But it's true. I'm Colin.
In the garden! In the garden!
Yes, it was the garden that did it. And Mary and Dicken, and the magic. No one knows. We kept it to tell you when you came. I'm well. I can beat Mary in a race.
Oh, Colin. Colin, my son.
Aren't you glad, Father? Aren't you glad? I'm going to live forever and ever.
Take me into the garden, my boy, and tell me all about it. Oh, I thought it would be dead.
Mary thought so too at first, didn't you, Mary?
Yes, but it came alive.
Yes, it's come alive.
And now you're here, and I'm better. It needn't be a secret anymore. I dare say it'll frighten them nearly into fits when they see me. But I am never going to get into that chair again. I shall walk back with you, Father, to the house.
Ben Weatherstaff's duties rarely took him away from the gardens, but on this occasion he made the excuse to carry some vegetables to the kitchen, and being invited into the servants' hall by Mrs. Medlock to drink a glass of beer, he was on the spot, as he had hoped to be, when the most dramatic event Misselthwaite Manor had seen during the present generation had taken place. One of the windows gave a glimpse of the lawn, and Mrs. Medlock, knowing Ben had come in from the gardens, hoped that he might have caught sight of his master, and even by chance of his meeting with Master Colin.
Did you see either of them, Weatherstaff?
Aye, that I did.
Both of them?
Both of them. Thank you kindly, ma'am. I could suck another mug of that there beer.
Well, there you are. Together?
Together, ma'am.
Well, where was Master Colin? How did he look? What did they say to each other?
Well, I didn't hear that, along of only being on the step-ladder, looking over the wall. But I'll tell thee this, There's been going on outside as you house people knows nowt about. And what they'll find out soon.
What do you mean?
Look here, if that's curious. Look what's coming across the grass. And when Mrs. Medlock looked, she threw up her hands and gave a little shriek, and every man and woman servant within hearing bolted across the servants' hall and stood looking through the window with their eyes almost starting out of their heads. Across the lawn came the master of Misselthwaite, and he looked as many had never seen him, and by his side, with his head in the air and his eyes full of laughter, walked as strongly and steadily as any boy in Yorkshire, Master Colin.
If you've enjoyed this story, be sure to listen to other titles in the series, including Anne of Green Gables, A Little Princess, and The Railway Children.